we've got the 5-star himself hanging in the bullpen. So we got to bring him in, and we'll get to your Z-Chan brought up some great stuff about Tate, and we want to get to that 100%. But we got Ira, and it's late as hell in the swamp, and he's got to get the hell out of there. So, Ira, welcome, managing editor, Warchant.com, on the spot down in Gainesville for this, and it's what you see from Florida State. They look like ass for a quarter. And then all of a sudden, first of all, I got to start with this because I went on an epic rant in the beginning. I dropped some F-bombs, and then Jeff came on and did the same thing early on. To me, that was the worst. The call on Dent, I guess it was Dent. They never really specifically said who the penalty was on. Assuming it was Dent, was the worst call I had seen in an FSU game since Nigel Bradham got ejected in 2011. And I looked up, and it was your old buddy, Jeff Hesser, his crew, and we pulled up the 2016 story.
Did you really?
I did. I pulled it up. I took a screenshot of the table you did of that game and that MFer and his hatred for Florida State. So I'm sorry, I'm raining again. But just tell me, what is going through your mind when you saw that ridiculous call on Dent?
I just couldn't believe it. When it first happened, I thought, well, maybe, and they just turned off the lights here. Sorry about that.
Of course, they know you're on. They're like, we don't want to hear this FSU.
That's apropos, Ira. The lights are out for their season too. They're done.
It happened so quick. Akeem, it was a great blitz, dialed up perfectly. He gets in there, I just thought, okay, well, he must have targeted him. And then you see the replay, and you're like, no, he didn't. And then I was like, okay, well, they're going to review it and overturn it. But he didn't call targeting. He just called a personal foul, just a random personal foul, which is not reviewable. And yeah, man, before the game, when I walked in, Kurt, a couple other media people said, it's like Jeff Heeser's here. And I started to tweet that story, but I was like, you know what? I'm not going to rile up all the fans. I don't want to create any negative, put that in the universe. And then when that penalty got called, then I was like, okay, I'm about to tweet the story. And then I pulled it up on my screen. I was like, you know what? I still don't think we want that negativity in the universe. So I just said, let's see what happens here. And sure enough, man, they pulled it out. But yeah, that call was ridiculous. Mike Norvell actually said it was ridiculous in his post-game press conference. And it's inexplicable. He hit him too hard. It's just basically, it was like the Josh Farmer personal foul at NC State, was it 2 years ago, where basically he just sacked him too hard. And anyway, everything that could go wrong was going wrong. I think if you had to draw the script up for Florida to win this game with a redshirt freshman quarterback against a much better Florida State team, all of the things that happened in the first quarter and a half really had to happen between field position and penalties and just so many things. The incredible throw that Max Brown had down the sideline.
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah, but the one where, it's just unbelievable. And so, yeah, you're right. He had a couple of them. And so everything was kind of going their way. Florida State's down 12-0, takes a sack. And it just feels like, man, this might be how this ends. And that I really felt like that drive before the half was, I'm sure you guys have talked about it. That drive before the half was huge. And Tate made a couple of big throws in that drive. And Trey Benson obviously finished it off. But once they got that, you could see the way Florida State's players went when they gather. Norvell gathers them on the field at the end of the first half and talks to them before they go in the locker room. You could just see the way they were all acting. Like they felt like, okay, we dodged these bullets. We took these punches. Now it's our time. And, Florida fought in the second half, but Florida State was too much.
Yeah, and you're right. It's I don't know how much you saw there in the replay, but it's amazing if you see the slow motion on Dent hitting him when he's making contact, he actually turns his head away to make sure, I'm going to make sure this isn't a penalty. So he did exactly what you're taught to do and still got written up. But anyway, enough of that.
I was going to say, we're never moving on from that, are we?
No, we're not. But no, Tate, you brought up that drive, and to me, that was the biggest thing. One of the biggest talking points we've had from callers and from a lot of people in our chat right now on YouTube is, how do you judge Tate on this? And to me, I said, look, it's his first start. It's in an incredibly hostile environment. Everything's going against him. The fact that he pulled off that drive in the second quarter, I think he had the feeling going to halftime, FSU is going to win this game. FSU's been here. They've won these type of games. Florida loses these kind of games. You saw in the second half, they lost composure. Tate did his thing. So how do you if you were to grade Tate in his performance, what do you think of that?
Well, to me, it was the exact opposite. Like what Max Brown needed to have happen happened. What Tate Rodemaker needed to have happen, none of that happened. I mean, you had so many situations where Trey Benson in the backs, Trey Benson finishes with a great game. 3 touchdowns was huge in this game. This was an all-time great performance to score 3 rushing touchdowns in the swamp, including the dagger there at the end. But, man, early on in this game, he and Lawrence Toafili had a couple of runs that really killed Tate because you can't have him in the swamp making his first start in 4 years in 3rd and long situations. And they shouldn't have been. There was 2 or 3 runs where they should have been in 3rd and 5 or 2nd and 5. And instead, they take tackles for loss. They bounce things outside. And now you've got a situation where you're dropping that kid back in the teeth of not a good Florida defense, but any defense. Like the safety, I mean, man, they sent like 7 or 8 guys. And now that's on Tate. He needs to get rid of the ball. But it's also, man, it's a tough situation for a kid making his first start in this stadium where they feel like this is a chance to save their season. So I thought Tate played well in moments. It was not a good game overall for him. But again, I felt like there were so many things they did, including the coaching. I didn't think there's some of the play calls early were not helping him either. And I just felt like they didn't put him in a great situation in these circumstances. I'd like to see how he plays against Louisville on Saturday. Then I think we'll have a better idea of what Tate could be.
That's exactly my point. I said this was passable, but I go his final exam is going to be against Louisville in the ACC. To me, there's no jitters. It's going to be an FSU partisan crowd in Charlotte. Let's see how he does there. So Ira, flipping to the other side of the ball, because to me that's the story. Is Adam Fuller's defense in the second half? And our caller Bob called up early with a stat that Florida had more penalty yards than offensive yards in the second half. So you might want to save that for your story. Credit Bob for that who called in. But I mean, if you've seen, and Bob went through every single game, and you throw out some of the garbage time stuff, special teams, scooping scores, it's unbelievable how good this defense has been in the second half. You saw it again today. You know, when that defense gets in that rhythm, you just know that other team's not going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, for sure. And, you can discount it a little bit because of the Florida situation. Sure. They didn't have Hurts as well. But yeah, man, it is what they've done all year. So this wasn't a one-time deal. This is how they've been all season, and they came through again in a big way. I think in the fourth quarter, as I didn't have the stat you mentioned, but Aslan was telling me that in the fourth quarter, Florida had negative 15 yards of offense. I mean, that's incredible. And again, I know they were in a situation towards the end where they had to throw it, and that was a bad situation for them. But yeah, man, I thought the defensive line played really well. Jared Verse, I think Mike Norvell said he thought it might have been his best game. Braden Fisk was big. Kalen DeLoach getting the pick at the end. I mean, so many guys. And the only thing that worried me a little bit was they had a couple of chances to kind of knock it out. When there was a sack where Max Brown throws it, and the ball goes up in the air, and Renardo Green, instead of making a play on the ball, they end up almost getting a first down out of it. Then late in the game, Shaheem Brown has a pick. It would have been a tough catch, but man, you make that catch, and it's probably ball game. And it felt like they were not coming through with those big plays until the very end. But yeah, man, you cannot criticize the defense. I thought they were what they needed to be, and the only touchdown Florida scored the whole game was on when they were gifted the first down on a third down stop.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to ask you about Ira was, and I got to give credit to Tom and then bringing this up earlier, he was talking about Mike Norvell talking about Keon Coleman on that punt return and how key that was in the second half, and the fact that this punter is great. By the way, Florida's punter, fantastic. Outkicked his coverage on that one. So instead of like letting a ball inside the 10-yard line go, Keon has the green light to run that back, and what that did to set that late drive up for Florida State.
Well, that was huge, but again, that one made up for another one of those things we were talking about earlier where they kind of put Tate in some bad situations because earlier Keon let that 62-yarder go over his head and end up downing it, deep inside Florida State territory. They end up taking the safety. So, but no, he definitely redeemed himself, and you're right. And that kid boomed punts all night. He was awesome. Corey and I talked about it in the wrap. It feels like Florida State has faced a murderer's row of punters. I mean, every week it seems like the Miami kid with those directional punts. It's just been one thing after another. But yeah, Keon, that was huge. I mean, it's such a huge emotional lift in a game where and they weren't going to have many drives where they were going to drive the length of the field. So that was huge. And it wasn't a night where Keon Coleman did a whole lot offensively except draw a couple penalties and have one really nice catch. But other than that, it wasn't a huge game, but that punt return was enormous. And after the game, he sealed it just like he did against LSU in the season opener. If you remember, he did the running backflip, somersault, cartwheel.
I didn't know who made that flip. I didn't realize it was him.
And so, yeah, man, It's pretty cool. You know, again, man, I'm sure some people out there are frustrated that this team doesn't look great. The first half didn't look great, but it's just it's so cool that they ended the season. They didn't let what happened to Jordan derail their season. They have finished 12-0, only the 6th time, I think, in school history.
Yep. It sounds like Ira, the program is on fire. There's a fire truck in the background of some kind. Seriously, I hope everybody's okay in Gainesville. I'm not trying to make light of that. But two-part question for you real quick. It's an open-air press box. You could hear it loud as day, clear as day, loud as hell on television, the war chant being blared by Florida State's marching chiefs throughout the game. I wanted to know your thoughts about the crowd split, how many Florida State fans showed up for this game relative to maybe some of the games you've been to and documented this rivalry in the past. And then the second part would be about the post-game press conference and maybe the attitude towards flipping the switch towards the ACC championship. I wonder how the messaging was for that, or if tonight was about tonight only and they weren't really talking about flipping the page and getting ready for next week.
Yeah, no, the Florida State crowd was awesome. It wasn't close to 50-50. I'm guessing it was probably 75-25. But there were a lot of Noles here, and you could, like you said, you could hear them. But the marching chiefs were incredible. I mean, they did not stop. It's like, you know, it's a joke. We all kind of complain about how little they get to play. Well, there was nobody stopping them tonight, and they played during Tom Petty. They played during Florida at the bottom. I mean, they played nonstop, and they really kind of got the crowd going. The war chant was going really loud. The fans just were really, I mean, again, they were a factor. There were a couple times where Florida's on offense where I thought Florida State's fans doing the war chant were affecting Florida's offense, especially a redshirt freshman quarterback. So the crowd was awesome. Noles represented. The Chiefs were great. As far as looking ahead, yeah, you know, they actually talked about that a little bit. I kind of wondered if they would focus, like you said, maybe just this was about tonight. This is about the regular season. But when I asked Tate Rodemaker after the game and a couple of the other players about it after the game, Tate was like, we're finishing this for 13. Like he immediately said, no, we're finishing this for 13. So, yeah, man. And I think it was Benson or Verse. One of them said, tomorrow morning, we're getting right back to work and we're doing this. So nice. I don't know, man. I think that this was a nice win because you had to gut it out. And it was so many things that were challenging, especially the Tate Rodemaker having to make a start here and all that. Now I think you're going to have some even footing going into this Louisville game. Like you're not going into a road trip to the swamp. You're getting a little bit more time to prepare. So I think, you know, I think they feel like they're going to play really well in the ACC championship game. And if they do that, then, you know, and if they play well, they deserve to be in the playoff. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Ira. I know that there's a lot of content to come on warchant.com, including Corey's column, your 3-2-1. You're going to get in right now around 3:00 in the morning. So we appreciate you taking the time. They shut the lights off, but they never shut the light off on you and the coverage you bring to the site. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. And also Matt Lacer's here, and I think he interviewed Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star wide receiver, and a couple other players as well. So we'll have plenty of recruiting coverage. We don't get a whole lot of on the road, but we brought Matt with us, so we've got recruiting coverage coming as well. So stay connected to Warchant.
Thank you, Ira. That's
Thanks,
outstanding.
Ira. Safe travels, buddy.
Safe home from the swamp where they turn the lights out on their season.
As soon as Ira went on, they're like, nope. Not giving them lights.
Actually, better yet, we turned the lights out on their season. That's what we did. We turned the lights out on Florida's season.